Welcome back to the Bubblehead Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Eric. I'm with my co-host Robert here. How you doing, Robert?
I'm doing good. Had a first little taste of football this past week with the Hall of Fame game. Um, I think the big news there is Josh Jacobs starting and playing at least some decent minutes for the Hall of Fame game, at least.
Yeah, it's everybody's up in arms because Josh Jacobs was probably the best player, at least non-rookie, to play in that game. Are you worried? It's an indication that Jacobs is not going to be a bell cow, that Jacobs maybe is going to be traded, or are you taking nothing away from that at all?
I take something away from it, but I don't take much into it. I do think it is a story. I think the biggest story, though, is just that I don't think this is going to be a Jacobs year that we've seen in the past. I think they're going to spread the ball around. And I think that's what I got the most from the Hall of Fame game. I think it's probably going to be maybe RB2, a low RB2 season still for him, and I think that's probably the ceiling. Maybe low RB3 or high RB3.
Yeah, I mean, Jacobs has been a workhorse for them in his time with the Raiders. Been high volume in his path to success in fantasy. He's been, hovering right around, RB12. He's produced, but I'm with you. I'm a little worried. I don't know if he's going to get the volume. Zamir White looked pretty good. Zamir White's good. They didn't pick up the fifth-year option. It makes sense to me for them to really give Zamir White a evaluation, give him enough touches, let him, prove that he could be the starter next year. I'm with you. I'm definitely pushing Jacobs down a little bit, but to be fair, we kind of have that already baked into his ADP. I mean, he's not going as an RB1. He's not going as a high-end RB2. He's going, right around that RB24 range, depending on drafts. So if the hate goes a little farther, I think I'm going to start trying to buy Jacobs because they might become a value.
Yeah. All right. Well, you want to jump into some of the other off-season stories here? So
some training camp buzz.
Yeah. So the big ones, I think, Kyle Phillips, Isaiah Pacheco, which I probably said that name wrong, to be honest, but Romeo Dubes. So these are kind of the three biggest risers so far that I've seen from training camp. And I think it's a good thing to discuss them all here. So what do you want to start us off?
Well, I just want to take a quick victory lap on Kyle Phillips. I think Phillips is exactly what we're seeing in camp. He is a great route runner. He's shifty, and he's good. I mean, bring on the white slot receiver comps. Like, he is Renfro. I think Renfro is probably a better comp than the two, New England slot receivers of Edelman and Welker. But the question is where is he in the target order, right? They have Burks, the first-round pick. They have Robert Woods, who's a fantastic player coming off injury. Do they put those two out wide and Phillips is in the slot? I know that Burks did a lot of slot work in college. Woods has done a fair amount of slot work over his career. I'm just curious, what type of target share we can really count on with Phillips. I'm not jumping to put my lineups this year. Excited that, a player that I got in the fifth round of rookie drafts is making noise, and you could probably sell him for a second right now, right? If you want to take that value, it's not a terrible idea. What about you?
Yeah, so Kyle Phillips, I liked him too. He's absolutely showing what I think he showed in college, which is a very good ability to separate. And that's really what you want at the NFL level, right? If you're separating, then you can be an elite receiver. and he has the athleticism. It's not like he's a bad athlete by any means. Like most of the time you put slot receivers and you're thinking, oh, they're terrible athletes, but that's not really the case with Kyle Phillips. He's not like a huge target by any means, but he's not a bad athlete. And so, I think he has potential, but like you said, right, I have no interest in putting him in a lineup this year. And maybe he does something towards the end of the season, maybe. But if you're drafting him with the expectation that he's going to be something this year, you're probably going to be mistaken. And that's not like a knock on the player. It's just how it is with rookie running or wide receivers. Excuse me. Rookie wide receivers, they generally don't produce early in their careers. It generally takes until the second or third year before they produce. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm happy about the success, but I'm tempering my expectations for 2022 a lot. How
and then
about
moving
Pacheco?
on to
What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the biggest interest there is that he's in Kansas City, right? Or my question is, are we doing the same thing that we did with Clyde, and just assuming that we're going to have an elite running back because he plays for Kansas City? He's been getting fantastic reports in training camp, but I just don't know. I don't know what to think, right? He wasn't really on my radar to go into the draft, to be honest. But he's getting big comps. Like he got a comparison of Priest Holmes from one of the things that I've seen from the beat reporters. So, that's a big comp. I mean, what do you think?
I think this is a good indication that we are in the early days of August and it's time to overreact. Come on, like with you, this player wasn't on my radar pre-NFL draft, and guess what? They weren't on NFL teams drafts. That's why he was a 7th-round pick. I mean, sure, there's a possibility, but the likelihood of a 7th-round pick hitting in fantasy very low. If I have Pacheco, I'm selling him for anything. You could probably definitely get a third. You might be able to get even a 2nd-round pick right now. I'm the Clyde truth. Call me as it is. I'm thinking that the fact that he had his gallbladder removed right before the season, he lost a bunch of weight. He wasn't right in his second season. So I'm thinking that Clyde is going to be – I think this is Clyde's best year. Is Clyde, the best running back in that class, which he was taken first? No, obviously not. They made a huge mistake. They should have taken DeAndre Swift. Swift would have been perfect for what they wanted out of Clyde. But yeah, I mean, I'm not buying the Pacheco hype.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you though on Swift being a perfect fit in that offense. But I mean, maybe that's what Pacheco could be, right? Like maybe he could be an athletic, like or running back. Like I don't know. Like he's getting such rave reviews that I'm almost like interested, but at the same time, like I don't even. Like I've never even seen the guy play, like other than and I reviewed some of this film like right after the news started breaking, but I was like, he wasn't like a big name in college, which to me like that says a lot. Like if you're not producing in college, like what makes me think that you're going to produce at the NFL level, especially a running back? Like
I'm with you. I mean, this happens every training camp, preseason. Every year there's later round picks, or I mean, this is the shape of their life season, right? This is when everyone's in the best shape. They're either in the best shape of their life or they're injured. That's the two possibilities right now. It seems like, and I'm not buying it. I'm sorry. This reminds me of too many other situations where people get overhyped because there's nothing, to talk about. So they just make up stories, basically. I'm sure he's playing fine, but.
So yeah. The other person, though, is Romeo Dubes, right? So Dubes actually was on my radar. I actually liked him. He wasn't like my favorite prospect by any means. He was still a later round pick in my eyes, but honestly, like I'm not that terribly surprised that he's been a decent player for them in training camp even. Well, so because one, Watson's not playing right now, he's hurt, and they didn't have any weapons to begin with, so who else was going to get be a star there? I'm not surprised that he is at least playing well. Again, though, I think he's in the same boat as Kyle Phillips. I don't think he's going to produce early on in the NFL.
Yeah, is it Dubes? Is it Dubs? I don't know. I'm gonna wait till Collinsworth, announces his name, because this is one of those classic college lower tier players that I've heard it both ways, so I'm not sure. I'm sorry if we're mispronouncing your name. One of us are. I thought it was Dubs. You thought it was Dubes. Who knows? But I liked Romeo. Let's go with Romeo. I liked Romeo. Watching the tape, he's a big player. He's got good speed. He was with Strong there in Nevada. Had a good little career. But then he went to the Senior Bowl and he really stunk it up. Honestly, he was one of the worst receivers. He couldn't get off the line. He was getting jammed, and I was really off. I was really off of Romeo. I was like, nope, no way. He's a small conference player, and once he came up, let him down. So now I'm like, what's going on? Because, like you said, right, Watson's been out. Watson's barely participated. So I'm wondering if this is the news that we need to go get Watson a discount. Right, Watson was a late first round pick in a lot of rookie drafts. I got to think a second. Could fetch Watson back. I still think Watson is the far more likely player to be a fantasy success than Dubs or than Romeo here.
Yeah, that's, I think, one of the biggest things for me with training camp is I think people overreact a lot to the beginning of training camp. It's the same thing with like a lot of the wide receivers that we see, they're getting listed at like the unofficial depth charts at like third or fourth string. Like, that is not news. That's not news. That's them getting added to the offense. And I can guarantee you that the coaches aren't going to just put it like, oh, yeah, this dude's starting week 1. Yep, guaranteed. Like, they're not going to say that. They're just not. Like, they're going to make these guys work for it. And I don't think it's a bad thing that they're getting like placed in this at the top of the depth chart or at the bottom of the depth chart. I don't think it matters at all. And I think Romeo is the same thing, right? He is taking advantage of the fact that Christian Watson is out. And so one of the players that I would imagine would have been at least gaining targets from Rodgers hasn't been playing. So a lot of those targets are going to then go to the other rookie because their wide receiver core is not good. But I'll say this. I don't want Watson right now either for this coming year because he's missing time. And until he comes back, he's not going to gain those reps with Aaron Rodgers. And so then you're looking at probably he's going to struggle at the beginning of the season. And I'll try to get him up maybe the middle of the season, maybe. But it just depends on health for me at that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. I say go get Watson. I think you're right. I think wait another month or two, and then the price might even go lower. Not only is Watson missing time, he's coming from North Dakota State, right? He already had a big jump, in competition, and he's getting behind Romeo and all these others that are getting time with the offense, getting time with Rodgers. That's a really good point.
So, final big riser. And so I don't know what's going on with my Twitter, but I've been getting all on board. Everything. It seems like every single Dolphins tweet finds my Twitter page. So I have been hearing nothing but Tua for the last week. And I'll say this. Dolphins fans are in love with Tua right now. And I think it's time to pump the brakes. This is training camp, guys. Let's see him in actual games.
What kills me is like you see all random one pass videos of him like completing a pass, and it's they're like, oh, look at him, deep touchdown pass. It's like, well, he should be doing that, right? That's like the standard, right? The bar you have to clear to be an NFL quarterback. But too, it's like that wasn't even that good of a throw. Like, you could tell the receiver like had to like slow down to catch it or whatever. I'm like, I don't know. Between the two of us, I was kind of the Tua defender, a few months ago when we were breaking down, Miami's team. I'm not out on Tua, but I'm definitely not in. I mean, I haven't given up. With Tua, the biggest thing for me is injury. I'm hoping that the reason he's played these years is because he's not quite past that hip injury. I'm hoping we see that pre-injury too. I mean, he was amazing at Alabama. I mean, I don't need to tell you. You watch more SEC games than just about anybody.
I mean, I haven't seen him come back from it yet.
That's the thing. He hasn't looked the same.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's got all the weapons now. The offensive line's still a little shaky, but
shit, I mean, I think the offense will be fine. Yeah, I mean, I think the offense will be fine. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be a decent offense, at least, if not a good offense. You're throwing the ball to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and then Mike Gesicki in the red zone. Like, you should be good as an offense. But I don't know if that's even like, I don't know if Tua is going to put him over the top. Any other training camp news you want to kind of talk about? Any other big stories that we haven't talked about? Or
so I want to talk about it. We've talked about it a lot offline, but even mentioned it. I just want to say, Bill Belichick, what the fuck are you doing? Like, give Mac Jones some weapons. Give Mac Jones some coaches. Like, by all accounts, again, right, it's freaking training camp, so don't believe much of it. But all accounts, Mac Jones, he looks better shape, right? Like the whole joke that he looked like, he had the dad bod at 23 years old, but he's looking better. But come on, what are we doing? Like, this could be a good football team. This could be a great quarterback. But, I mean, what are we going to run? Like 1981 style offense? Like, it's killing me, right? I'm a Pats fan, if you can't tell.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of negative reports out of training camp for the Pats, and I'm not full on panic yet, but I'm pulling back. It's like one of the few offseason training camp news stories that I am actually like reading into. And the reason for that is because I don't believe that they have a legitimate coordinator. And if you don't have a legitimate coordinator, why would I believe that it improves?
Yeah, I mean, literally, they don't have an offensive coordinator named at this point. Bill's basically said something to the like, yeah, I mean, we don't really need titles here. Titles don't mean anything. What do you mean? You need someone to be dedicated to running the offense.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I think
what it comes down to is Mac Jones has probably the worst receiving weapons in the NFL. You mentioned Green Bay and their terrible, wide receiver, but I think New England's even worse with their pass catchers.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've heard a lot is that they haven't even gotten any separation at all from any of their receivers. And if you're not getting any separation, you're going to look like, I watch the Saints a lot, right? Obviously. The Saints receiving core last year when Michael Thomas was hurt and it was Marquez Callaway, just Marquez Callaway, it was awful. It was awful to watch. Like, they weren't getting separation. They couldn't throw the ball to wide receivers at all, unless it was a deep throw. And, they upgraded the wide receiving core with Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave, and then Michael Thomas coming back. But, I don't see any reason that the Patriots would be any better than the Saints were last year at wide receiver.
I think the Pats might be better last year in 2021 than they will be in 22. This division's getting tougher, right? The Jets are going in the right direction. Miami's getting a lot of hype. Obviously, Buffalo's fantastic. I would not be surprised if Mac Jones can't lead them to a playoff berth with the pass catchers that he has at his disposal.
Yeah. So last little bit of news I want to talk about, and this is just from a Saints fan. Michael Thomas is back. Every single thing that I've heard from Nick Underhill, the Saints best beat reporter, is that he's back. All the videos I've seen of Michael Thomas, he is cutting as quickly as I can remember. I 100% believe that Michael Thomas will be at the very minimum a high wide receiver 2, and I think he's very likely that he is a wide receiver 1.
Yeah, mic drop that one. I mean, I tend to agree. Maybe not quite as bullish on what he produces, but everything we're hearing for, and you're right. Underhill, he's the goat of beat reporting in New Orleans. He looks amazing, and I gotta say, I'm snagging Michael Thomas as my third wide receiver. Super late in drafts, and I'm like giddy. I'm over here sitting like a little kid. I'm like, are you kidding me? This guy could he could be a top 5 wide receiver. Jameis Winston has proven that he can be prolific as a passer. And obviously Michael Thomas has proven he can be prolific as a fantasy weapon. I'm with you. I think we look, if the health keeps going the way it is, a lock for top 20, and wide receiver 1 is realistic. Like, it's not a pipe dream.
And people can just say, oh, well, he doesn't have Drew Brees anymore. But without Drew Brees, he was still producing top 5 fantasy points per game weeks. So, that record-breaking season, I'm pretty sure Teddy Bridgewater started, I think it was either 5 or 6 games he started that year, if I'm not mistaken. I might have my years mixed up there, but I'm pretty sure that season Teddy Bridgewater started a few games. So.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly on that year every game, but I mean, one, we've seen Jameis Winston throw for 5,000 yards. We know he's the first pick in the referee. He's that as a passer, and he looked good ACL last year. Not to mention, when Taysom Hill was throwing the ball to Michael Thomas, Taysom Hill, a tight end, folks. This guy's a tight end. He's not. He was still producing. Like, he wasn't producing, Michael Thomas 2019 numbers, but he was still a fine option. So, yeah. Michael Thomas healthy, sign me up.
Yep. All right. Well, do you want to go ahead and jump into Devy tight ends here? I think we talked about the NFL enough, right?
I think we've kind of been like delaying talking about the tight ends, and there's a reason for that, Robert. Right? We've talked about it. It gets ugly pretty quick when you're talking about Devy tight ends. It's not like the QBs or the running backs or wide receivers where we're like excited to talk about the 10th best one, the 20th best one. Tight ends, it's like, I don't know. I mean, after the first few, it seems like kind of just take your pick, dart throw, hope for the best. What about you?
After the first, 5, maybe 6, we're talking complete dart throws, right? You look at even the top 5 tight end prospects of the last 10 years. I'm pretty sure it's only like a 10-15% hit rate of getting actually drafted high in the first round, or high in the draft, excuse me. It's not a guarantee just because they're a top 10 tight end and the prospects, that they're going to be successful. So, we'll see. Let's jump into it though. And yeah, this is Erik's rankings this week. So if you have issues with it, hit Erik up and let him know what you think.
Yeah, let's fight about tight end rankings.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, yeah, hit us up. Let me know where I'm screwed up. Oh, hey, yeah, I love that player. You're on board with me. I think these two are kind of easy, right? In tier 1, Michael Mayer, he was both of them, excuse me. Brock Bowers was the freshman last year, but Mayer, right? Looking ahead in 2023 draft, a lot of people are talking first round for this guy. I'm thinking he doesn't get out of second round so long as he stays healthy. Which obviously is great draft capital. You don't need to be a first-round pick. Certainly not for tight end. But Bowers, wow. I mean, we're talking about George's offense that was not exactly prolific at passing. He just lit up the whole freaking country as a true freshman. I was so impressed. He doesn't quite have the quintessential size, that you want, that the Michael Mayer does. But these two, I would not be surprised if both of them are, first round NFL draft picks.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll kind of disagree with you a little bit about size. I think Brock Bowers and Michael Myers, both of them on 247 at least, had basically the same height weight profile. 6'4", 240 for Brock Bowers, and 6'4", 232 for Michael Mayer. But the hardest thing about height and weight is that honestly, you can get completely different numbers that are actually true. You know, like they could grow 2 inches, right? They could be mislabeled by a couple inches. So that really doesn't really come into factor honestly until till the Pro Bowl, or not the Pro Bowl, the Combine. Wow, completely completely different dimension there. But yeah, I mean, I think Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, they're both in the same tier, right? I would have Michael Mayer first just because he's a 2023 prospect. But I think both of them, they have both had almost a 30% target share in their offenses, and both are just huge targets, right? Which that's all you want out of a tight end, right? That is what translates to the NFL. And so I like both these guys. I think both of them are legitimate blockers and legitimate receiving threats. And but I'll say it again. I said it whenever we were doing rookies. I want to see above a 7 RAS in the NFL Combine before, or at least in the NFL Combine and Pro Days, before I am willing to even put you on my board at tight end. I will roster these guys, obviously, but there is nothing that will get you traded faster than having a poor RAS score as a tight end.
Yeah, that's great. And you're right about needing to see the actual real numbers, right? Height and weight and at the combine. And like I said, we need that athletic profile. We need to see the numbers. Because production doesn't necessarily dictate who's going to be great. There's plenty of tight ends that get great production in the college and sucked in the NFL, or vice versa. Did nearly nothing in college and were really great in the NFL.
Yeah.
To me, I'm with you. The most important thing is let's see some real height, real weight, and let's see some athletic numbers. Obviously, what we watch on the film, it's not irrelevant. I'm going to factor that in. But I'm with you, right? Look at Jalen Watermeyer. Look what happened there, right? Jalen Watermeyer, some people's tight end 1 for the 2022 class, and then he basically ran the size of had the speed scores of a lineman. So production isn't necessarily dictate everything. You got to have at least decent numbers for me. Not quite as hard line with you with your numbers, but right. There's legitimate math behind your process.
Yeah, just to kind of talk about that. So for the people who didn't hear or haven't heard our take on the rookie tight end episode that we did before the draft, just to kind of give you an idea of what you need to see out of tight ends. So there's only 2 tight ends in the last 15 years that have had even decent seasons that did not have above a 7 RAS score. The only 2 was Zach Ertz, excuse me. Yeah, Zach Ertz. And then Mark Andrews was also fairly low. He was still above a 7, but he was still fairly low. So really, honestly, looking at above an 8, if you're not above an 8, the likelihood of you having success at the NFL level is pretty low. But just to go down to a 7, we're talking at 90 to 95% of tight ends in the NFL are above a 7 RAS. That is a huge number. So if you're not above that number, why would I think you're even we're talking about having any fantasy success? I'm talking about the first 30 tight ends in fantasy. 90 to 95% of those guys are above a 7 RAS. So that is why I have that number as such a factor in my rookie rankings for tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, I like it, and I'm turn me on to it because I used to just kind of look at look at the actual numbers, the 40, the vertical jump, the shuttles, this and that, and then I'd look at the film and kind of gauge how athletic is this player. But RAS is this single number, right? It just boils it all down to one thing. It's very simple. Check it out. It's called the Raw Athletic Score. If you've never heard about it, check it out. It's really good info, and it's not useful only for tight ends, but it seems to be the most predictive, or maybe not predictive, but it excludes people that you don't want the best. Um, yeah, it's interesting, right? We were talking earlier. Some of these players in these rankings, they weren't recruited as tight out of high school. They were wide receivers. There might even be, a defensive player in the mix on this list. And I think that's kind of telling to what you're getting at is you have to be athletic to be a really good NFL tight end. You can't again, it's not 1981. We don't want a 6 offensive lineman at 10. I mean, yes, there are some teams that employ that, but they're not using fantasy, right? They're literally just brought on, for the blocking.
Yeah. So I don't think we have anything else about the tier 1 here. I think both of these guys are going to fly through the athletic score testing, just from what it looks like on tape. But that's my piece on RAS. I'm working on actively kind of comparing all the different positions to their RAS score. It's kind of like my long-term project here that I've been working on. So I'm looking forward to talking about that. I think that's probably going to be ready after this season. So I want a little bit more data to kind of use and to kind of filter that out. But yeah, I think it's a really good metric if anybody's never heard of it. So, but yeah, you ready to move on to tier 2? Since I've said enough about RAS.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, it's important to discuss because it kind of explains our thought process. Like, what are we looking for? How are we making these rankings?
Yeah. So, big names here, Eric Gilbert, Jaheim Bell, and Michael Trigg. So, why do you have Eric Gilbert up here? What's your thought there?
All right. I mean, if we were talking a year ago, it wouldn't be ridiculous to put Eric Gilbert at number 1 on this list, right?
Right.
There were a lot of people that had Eric Gilbert as the number 1 Devy tight end, going into the 2022 season. The 2021 season. My biggest issue is that he's at Georgia. I don't understand. I really don't understand the offense they're going to run, right? They lose George Pickens this stud. Jermaine Burton is potentially a stud, right? Has potential breakout. Lose him. And then they have just tight end after tight end after tight end. So, how they get – I think Gilbert has more NFL projection than college production. Talking about raw athletic score, I bet he's over 9. Gilbert is a great athlete. He's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, he's exactly what you want in a fantasy tight end in terms of the athletic.
My biggest concern with Eric Gilbert is actually the character concerns, because he played at LSU first, and there were a lot of character issues that came out about him at LSU, and I just wonder if he actually wants it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he transferred, for playing time. He didn't transfer for anything. He transferred because he became, I believe it was academically ineligible, if I, have my facts straight.
No, he actually quit. He quit. He wanted to be closer to family, from what I understand.
Okay. I mean,
from what it sounds like, because he played the year, and then he, I guess he just couldn't handle it anymore, and that's that worries me in the NFL. Like, you can't just quit on an NFL team mid-season and leave. Like, that's just not.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's maybe he's 18, 19 years old, maybe that's why, but I don't know. It's worrying to me. That's why I've dumped him down a few tiers, just because it worries me.
Oh yeah, I mean, I hear you. Here's a big gap between tier 1 and 2 for me. But Gilbert, his just potential is so high, and we've seen it. It's not like he reminds me of Jai Hall in some ways. Is that his off-field things are preventing him from on-field success. The thing is we didn't really see it from Jai Hall as a freshman. Gilbert as a freshman was great.
Yeah, we were talking. I had him for his freshman year before all the kind of the stuff came out. I was like, man, this guy could be as good as Kyle Pitts, like coming out, like that level of talent, because he's hugely athletic, and he plays like a receiver. He plays like a receiver, and that's interesting. So next up here though is Jaheim Bell. To be honest with you, I have no interest in Jaheim Bell. Why? Because I don't think he's gonna pass the. I don't think he's big enough to be successful at tight end in the NFL. I think he's at best a wide receiver.
Yeah, and I'm definitely worried about that. Right, he was the smallest player on this list according to 24/7 Sports. Now, I'll kind of throw back what you said earlier is, hey, let's see the numbers, right? Because he's athletic and he has, broken out in one of the few glimmers of hope in South Carolina last year. Now you get Spencer Rattler. Maybe they can really, get something going. But I'm with you. I need to see, more legitimate tight end size numbers than what he was reported as coming out of high school.
Yeah, he's a great C2C asset. And, that's so honestly, after this tier, after tier 2 here, I have no interest in you unless you're providing me something in C2C. Michael Trigg is also, he's a really good C2C asset, I believe, because, Ole Miss, one, Lane Kiffin likes to throw the ball, if you didn't know. And I think they're going to look like they're going to be a good offense this year. And Michael Trigg, I think, is going to take a pretty solid share of targets there. And we'll see what happens with him next year. I think he stays in this tier, though. I think he's a potential second-round pick, and maybe he sneaks into the first round at the end of the first round one time, or in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, Trigg, we're talking projection here. Didn't really have a lot of production as a freshman last year at USC, but very talented, very athletic, and it seemed like Jackson Dart, pulled him to Ole Miss, right? They both transferred, and he didn't bring Trigg along with him, because he's like his pot dealer, like he brought him along because he thinks they can crush it in the SEC. This dude is very talented, and I mean, I'm with you. I think he's got a very high potential. I mean, this is still a projection, right? We haven't seen it yet, but his projection could be first round NFL draft pick.
Yeah. I don't have anything else about this part. Just moving on to tier 3. So, again, Sam Laporta, Jahlil Billingsley. So my question with Billingsley, right? He got benched at Alabama. I'm worried that I think he's a better college or a better NFL prospect than, he's a better than a C2C asset. But for Devy, I want to see some production this year. I want him to dominate at Texas this year.
Yeah, I call tier 3 kind of my the stinky tier, the one that I don't want to place here, but they kind of have to. Billingsley, he was pretty hyped up, right? He was in Bama. He had some moments, but I'm pretty sure that Saban kicked him off the team eventually. He certainly was basically forced to transfer, and he went with a few other Alabama recruits that Sark helped bring in. He went over to Texas. Billingsley concerns me off the field. Like, I don't think I don't know. I don't know what the issue is. Like, if you can't make it Alabama, why can't you make it in the NFL? That's the most NFL-like college there is, right? You bring in super talented players and just ultra competitive. If that's not your gig,
Well, and it's not like Alabama. Alabama doesn't produce tight ends either, so it's not like you're competing with anybody really great at Alabama for at least for tight ends.
Yeah, not within your position group. Not within your position.
Yeah. So Sam Laporta, he's a prototypical tight end, and he is from
Iowa
the tight end factory. This is the only school that is a tight end factory. They're the only one with that claim.
I don't know. You're sleeping on Notre Dame a little, I think. But I agree. I mean, I was definitely number one. I was definitely number one.
Yeah. Yeah. Tight end factory, give me their tight end 1. Just throw them on there and let me throw that dart and see if it hits.
Yeah, I mean, this is an older player. Actually was recruited as a wide receiver out of high school. But yeah, honestly, the fact that Laporta had a great year in 2021, and then he's at Iowa is honestly the only reason it's on this list. Like, you watch the tape and you're like, all right, I mean, yeah, maybe. But let's put it this way. Unless his athletic numbers are much better than I expect, not much, but better than I expect, I probably won't have Laporta in any of my leagues, just because I think a lot of people are going to see Iowa tight end and just assume he's the next one.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
and this is really like we said, tier 1 and 2. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about these players. There's a very reasonable path to fantasy success in the NFL. At this point on, we're either doing a huge projection or they're going to have to like break, the mold. They're going to have to break statistical likelihood.
Yeah, I mean, these are 3rd and 4th round picks at best.
Yeah.
So
I mean, right? We said we got to wait for the numbers. Maybe Sam Porter comes out and he does have that good, and he meets your box. He hits 7.2 on the RES. All of a sudden, I'm like, okay, I'm perked up, more interested than I am at the moment.
Yeah. So tier 4, this is the freshman. So yeah, I mean, my only thing with these is with freshmen, it is entirely potential. But like I said, all right, just because they're top tier freshmen recruits doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to be successful in college level. Honestly, it doesn't even mean that they're going to be like drafted, which is weird for every other position. It seems like if you're a 4-star recruit, your likelihood of getting drafted is at least a little bit higher. But these guys, I don't, tight ends, that's not really the case.
Yeah, I mean, this is the new hotness, right? That's what this tier is. The last one was the old crusties. This is the new hotness, right? This is number 1, 2, and 3 tight end recruits tree for the incoming freshman class, according to 24/7 Sports. Yes, that is. I'm actually grossed out by that. I didn't realize that. I just looked it up to double check. I'm grossed out that it's 1, 2, and 3. The reason I took them is that, one, I knew Johnson was number 1, but I like Belt because of the Georgia, and I like Skinner because of Miami. Georgia is obviously, starting to do some good things with their tight ends. At least it appears that way. And Miami, I really like what Miami's doing. I think that Cristobal has gotten that alumni base, committed. They invested in the program as needed to bring that program back. That program had been underinvested for, a decade plus. And his recruiting class is showing. I mean, he was a great recruiter at Oregon. I honestly started to become a little bit of an Oregon fan because I like Cristobal so much, just the way he runs his teams. So this is more of for at least Delp and Skinner, more of about the school. I'm just scouting the helmet. I believe in what these two programs are doing. They're high recruits. So yeah, give them a shot. But I'm with you. Who knows?
Yeah. So my big thing that I want to just kind of touch on here is with my drafting strategy for Devy tight ends is that I generally don't take any. So we play in C2C leagues primarily, right? So the only tight ends that I take are tight ends that have C2C value. And I honestly could care less if you are even like, I think you're an NFL prospect. Like, I don't care. Just give me the production in college, and then I'll draft the tight end sleepers from that get drafted on the NFL side. And I think tight end's the hardest position to predict because most of the guys who get drafted, honestly, most of them are like 3-star recruits or like the lower tier recruits. You could say like Brock Byers and Michael Meyer. Both of those guys are obviously stars, but the likelihood of me hitting one of those guys is so low that I just don't have any interest in trying to hit them. I'd rather just take a shot on the other positions.
Yeah, that's a good point. Tight end position, we're working on these projects. At least it's my side project to like really narrow this down and give you numbers. But I'm suspecting that tight end, their high school ranking matters the least out of any fantasy football position. And I'm not surprised, right? Because tight ends, even when they get to the league, take the longest to develop. I mean, Tight end, you've got to be able to block like a lineman and move and catch like a wide receiver, right? That's not easy physically to do that, right? At that elite world level. So it's a huge projection, and to take a 16, a 17, or an 18-year-old and be able to project them, that's super hard. That's super hard.
Yeah. So tier 5. I'll be honest, I have no interest in Will Mallory. And Jatavian Sanders, he's another guy, I think, kind of like Michael Trigg. I think you're kind of a projection there.
Yeah, I mean, they fell into this tier just because I didn't want to have a tier of one, but they're like the exact opposite player. Will Mallory, he's an older player. He doesn't really scream athleticism, but he's had a fair amount of production. And he's got that nice Miami tie, that I just talked about. So with Mallory, this kind of goes the same way with Laporta for me. The reason they're ranked at all, and especially Laporta a little higher, is it's more about what I think I could get in value for the player, not what I think I am going to utilize the player as in fantasy lineups. I expect Mallory and Laporta to get decent draft capital, and especially Laporta because he's got that Iowa name. People are going to want them. So if you have them on your roster, on your Devy team, your C2C team, I think, come May, come June of 2023 would be a great time to trade them. And, you could probably get decent value. And Jatavian Sanders, complete opposite. This player that basically didn't even play as a freshman, complete projection. I mean, he was the number one athlete recruit, right? You have all the positions, then you have athlete. Athlete, it's like basically 24/7. It's like, I don't really know, what position they're playing because they're that athletic. He could have played DN. He could play tight end. This dude is big. He's fast. He's strong. And he's got enormous potential. I mean, he's going to be playing Quinn Ewers. So, I just throw him on there just because he's got the potential.
Yeah, he's 6'3.5". He's 235. Like you said, he's a super big. He's an athlete. He's going to test off the charts. I think he could be a legitimate NFL prospect. But I don't think there's any playing time for him really this year with Billingsley. Right, if Billingsley, he's in tier 3, if he produces, then that doesn't really leave a lot of room for Jatavian Sanders to produce. So you're looking at more probably a pick next year. And so probably more likely that it goes in the draft in 2025 than anything. But yeah, I mean, he's an interesting prospect just because of the athletic ability, right? So, yeah. So next up is the honorable mentions. So Erik, your honorable mention. Yeah, go ahead, take the floor and tell us what.
All right, so I'm going to give the guy who took Jahleel Billingsley's job my honorable mention, Cameron Latu. So if you didn't know who Latu was before this year, you're like me. And that's because he was a edge rusher recruit out of high school. This is the one I told you. He's a defensive player. He's a player. He's an older player. But he showed a spark to me last year. He was pretty dynamic in the red zone for him, and he showed a little bit of wiggle. He's got good size, and obviously got the Bama title. I mean, you said it well. They don't exactly produce tight ends, but if I have Cameron Latu, in my dynasty league, is probably going to be interested in the productive tight end from Alabama. They can get drafted.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see if he gets drafted. Yeah, I mean, he shocked the world. He came out of nowhere, honestly. Everybody thought Billingsley was going to run away with the job, and then Cameron Latu comes in, out of nowhere. But for my honorable mentions, I got a few here. So Jake Beringstool, he's one of the top recruits from 2024 or from 2021. He is starting. He's going to take over the starting job at Clemson this year. So I think there's some potential there. Just because I question the the level of the wide receiving core in Clemson currently. I think they have potential in the wide receiving core, but I don't know if it's. But they weren't great last year, so we'll see what happens there. And I think he could be a legitimate option for either DJ or maybe Cade Klubnik, depending on who starts there, which would probably be DJ to begin the year at least. Eric All from Michigan. He honestly didn't play great until the second half of last year. You know, he's been injured a lot, so he's a kind of a name that I'm kind of projecting his production to increase now that he's back from injury, and I think he can reproduce what he did last year, and I think he's a legitimate NFL draft prospect coming into 2023. Benjamin Urasek, it's the same thing. You know, I think he is going to be a legitimate NFL draft prospect this coming year. I think he'll probably be going the 4th or 5th round, and I'll take a shot on that. Both of these guys are really good C2C assets. And then finally, Tucker Kraft. So if you play FCS and C2C, then this guy is definitely somebody to keep on your radar. But I know we don't play with FCS. We play with just FBS. But Tucker Kraft is a guy who is very interesting. You know, he is 6'5", 255, so he's got the size to play at the next level. And he looks like a really good receiver, you know, from the tape. And you know, I want to watch him a lot this year. I think he's going to be a good watch. South Dakota State is obviously, you know, not necessarily the top team that I want to watch, but you know, if I'm not doing anything and South Dakota State's on, then, you know, I might as well throw it on to watch Tucker Kraft. But yeah, I think he's a project. I think you know, it's kind of similar to you know, how Jelani Woods kind of skyrocketed up people's boards as a quarterback. I think Tucker Kraft could go to the combine and the Senior Bowl and kind of show out and put himself on people's draft boards. So I think it's a good Devy prospect to invest in if you have a spot.
I gotta say, your FCS player is the one that really stands out to me. The other ones, I mean, they're like your typical either former high recruit or they're at a good school, right? Stanford has a lot of success producing tight ends. Michigan's pretty good too. But the Tucker Kraft is the one that's really interesting. Someone just turned to them like last week. I really haven't, you know, read up too much. Well, haven't watched any film actually, but I know that they're, you know, a productive player with some athleticism from South Dakota State. Interesting player. I mean, you make a good point, right? He's not eligible in my C2C leagues because, you know, they don't allow FCS players. So I guess you could stash him for the potential that this guy breaks out. I don't know. Like, are we going to get to see him go to the Senior Bowl? I'd love that, right? Same thing with Christian Watson. You were able to see him against, you know, good on good. It's just hard to make that jump, you know, and we'll see. And he super sleeper. I love it. You know, got some FCS love. Yurkasek out of those other three, right? Those traditional recruits are the ones. He's my most interesting one. I like the way he plays. I don't know. It's so hard when you're looking at these tight ends. We talked about it. Like, unless you're a superstar like Myers or Brock, like, how do you select them? It's. I mean, NFL teams aren't good at it. There's a lot of good tight ends that are late picks. You know,
yeah.
So this isn't like quarterbacks where, you know, 28 of the starting quarterbacks in the league are first round picks. You know, it's. I'd be surprised that even half are first round picks.
Yeah. So,
yeah,
Tucker
I mean,
Kraft,
hey, I like
kind of. He reminds me a little bit of Adam Troutman. So Adam Troutman was drafted out of Dayton. I think you could see a similar rise in the draft for him. So, yeah, one other thing I wanted to mention was just about training camp. I didn't mention it before. Is so I've seen a lot of people, you know, crowning Matt Corral and who's the other guy? I don't remember who was Sam Howell. Sam Howell and Matt Corral. Both of them are getting grave reviews from training camp. Look, let's just pump the brakes on those. Like it is so rare for fourth, fifth round quarterbacks to start and be successful, period, in the NFL. If you're, investing heavily in those two players, you're probably going to be disappointed. Especially in training camp, right? Like these guys, like training camp is designed for quarterbacks to produce better. Just, kind of how it's designed. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm third and fifth round pick. Corral interests me just because, one, he has a much better draft out, but really it has to do with Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield more than anything. Like, what's the cost to get Matt Corral? Like, I'll give you like a fourth rounder, something super, cheap. But I don't think whoever drafted Corral is going to go for that. So to me, I have 0 shares of either player. It's not at all on my radar.
Yeah, I mean, it takes like almost a freak injury for them to even start in the NFL. Like Dak Prescott was not supposed to start his first year. It took a Tony Romo freak injury that ended his career for him to see the field, right? So, it's not likely. So, but you have anything else you want to talk about for Devy tight ends?
Draft NFL proven tight ends. If you're playing a Devy league or playing a C2C league, do not rely on a pipeline coming from college because it's not going to happen. The likelihood of you selecting these players is very, very low. I struggled to find 12 players that I wanted to talk about. I mean, some of them, I think I pinched my nose because, they're old crusty farts. Like, no offense to these players. They're probably great people. But my prediction for them in the NFL for fantasy is not very good, for half of these. So, yeah, go and pay up and get your tight ends because it's a limited position. At least that's how I play. I want my tight end. I'm not going to, if this is best ball, that's different. I'll grab, 5 tight ends, tight end 2s and whatnot, and I'll get good production that way. But if I'm in a lineup league, you better believe I'm going to go and get one of those good tight ends.
Yeah, in our C2C league, I ended up drafting Kittle, Hawkinson, Mark Andrews, and Darren Waller. So I feel like I've set at tight end for at least the next 5 years. And then, I have Tommy Tremble and Noah Gray. So I'm hoping that kind of they can, maybe they'll be successful. But, I'm not relying on a talent because who knows what's going to happen with these guys? Who knows even who's going to be good, who's not? Like, just honestly, like Mark Andrews, he was a 3rd round pick. George Kittle, I believe he was a 3rd round pick too, not 2nd round. And, or Travis Kelce was, excuse me. George Kittle, I think, was a 6th rounder. So, right, like take a pick on a tight end, and maybe they'll be successful, maybe not. But there's not a lot of 1st round picks out there that are successful. So, but yeah, we thank everybody for listening, and please give us a follow on Twitter. Please give us a like and subscribe if you can, and yeah, if you have any questions for me and Eric, just let us know and throw it in the comments or hit us up on Twitter and we'll answer. And thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.